My name is Akaiki and I conduct research at an educational institution in Japan. A long time ago, I was a flutist, but later I studied economics and business administration. Economics is the study of how to allocate limited resources in the most efficient way. This perspective has strongly influenced my research, and at the core of all my work lies the question of how to optimize resource distribution. In addition, I have conducted research in the fields of faculty development and quality assurance. This includes providing training programs for university faculty and engaging in various initiatives aimed at ensuring the quality of higher education. With this background, my current interest lies in exploring frameworks for health education for musicians. The title of today's presentation is The Future of Health Education for Musicians, a framework proposal based on quality assurance and international standards. This presentation is based on part of the research I conducted between 2017 and 2020 during my doctoral studies. Background. Health education for musicians has been conducted in various educational institutions. Reports from countries such as Germany, Australia, Canada, and Japan have described the current state of national approaches. However, according to a literature review by Akaiki, 2023, the following issues have been identified. The learning goals to be achieved are often left to the discretion of individual educators. In many programs, learning objectives and assessment methods are not aligned. In the field of health education for musicians, there is a lack of discussion on what should be learned and acquired, resulting in insufficient assurance of educational quality. The purpose of this study is to examine and propose how the quality of health education for musicians can be assured through an overview of relevant guidelines and frameworks. Next, I will explain the methods used in this study. I collected information on quality assurance frameworks in higher education and the music field. To do so, I participated in relevant conferences to stay informed about current discussions and gathered related literature. After comparing and analysing the collected materials, I organised a framework required for health education for musicians. Here is a list of the conferences I attended between 2017 and 2019. All of them focused on quality assurance in higher education. In particular, I participated in conferences related to the Bologna process, which has been a key initiative in Europe, as well as conferences organised by quality assurance bodies. The findings of this study are as follows. As a result of comparing and analysing the literature I collected, I found that there are several important perspectives to consider when discussing how to ensure the quality of health education for musicians. Today, I will introduce two of them. The first important perspective is the definition of terms. I work in an international context where people come from different countries and institutions. Even when we use the same words, they may not carry the same meaning. This point has been highlighted in previous studies, so I would like to begin by clarifying some key definitions. First, I would like to define the term higher education institutions. A commonly used synonym is tertiary education. Higher education institutions generally refer to institutions that offer programs leading to bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. Some qualifications, such as the bachelor's degree, are clearly identifiable as part of higher education. However, others are more ambiguous. For example, the diplom. In your country, what level does the diplom correspond to? Let's take a look at the International Standard Classification of Education, a statistical framework developed by UNESCO. The International Standard Classification of Education, commonly known as ISCED, consists of levels ranging from 0, 1 to 8. The educational levels prior to university, where we are currently based, are classified as levels 0, 1 through 4. Levels 5 to 8 of the ISCED framework correspond to what is referred to as tertiary education. When it comes to the diplom, the term is used across a very wide range of educational levels, anywhere from level 3, upper secondary education, to level 7, master's level, depending on the specific program. Here, I use the term program to refer to a coherent set of structured courses. For example, the master's program in performing arts medicine offered by University College London can be considered a single program in this sense. The next term I would like to clarify is quality. The concept of quality in higher education is multidimensional. It applies to various aspects, including the content of the curriculum, the level of academic programs, the quality of students and faculty, the standard of infrastructure such as buildings, facilities and equipment used in education and research, institutional management and governance, and services provided to the local community. I would like to begin by reviewing the background to why quality is important. The concept of quality assurance in higher education is said to have emerged in the early 1900s in the United States and in the latter half of the 1900s in Europe. In the United States, due to geographic conditions, there was a strong demand for distance education, which led to greater diversification in learning formats. During this process, institutions known as diploma mills or degree mills began to appear, offering low-quality degrees. To protect the integrity of university-level education from such practices, society demanded a system to ensure academic quality. This gave rise to a quality assurance system known as accreditation, in which third-party external agencies certify the eligibility of higher education institutions. In Europe, the expansion of the European Union created a strong demand for global human resource development through higher education. In this context, efforts were made to increase student mobility within Europe. To facilitate mobility, it was necessary to standardize credit systems and degree levels, which eventually led to the broader initiative known as the Bologna process, which I will explain later. Additionally, UNESCO has advocated for the establishment of internationally comparable standards of quality that are recognized globally. This includes the removal of barriers to student mobility through the development of shared international frameworks. The final terms I would like to clarify are equivalence and compatibility. These are frequently used in the context of quality assurance in higher education, but they are technical terms that may not be familiar to everyone, yet they are crucial concepts. Equivalence refers to a state in which the level of learning achieved at an institution in one's own country is recognized as being of the same level in another country. Compatibility refers to the acceptance of a degree obtained in one's own country by other countries or institutions. These concepts are closely tied to the Bologna process, a reform initiative involving 49 countries, primarily in Europe, aimed at harmonizing higher education systems. To enhance mobility across borders for students, faculty and professionals, it became necessary to enable the mutual recognition of qualifications between countries. For example, suppose a student completes a bachelor's program in their home country and wants to pursue a master's degree abroad. If the host institution does not recognise the student's bachelor's degree as valid, the student cannot smoothly transition into the master's programme. Therefore, the bachelor's degree must have equivalent value, and it must also be compatible, that is, recognised by institutions in other countries. So, can the content of the advanced health education programmes for musicians that we are familiar with be considered compatible with one another? I will now introduce several examples of programs that are implementing advanced approaches to health education for musicians. It should be noted that although such programs are being carried out in different countries and institutions, there has been very little comparative research conducted across them. I have plotted each program according to the educational level it is designed for. Due to time constraints, I'm unable to present the full results of the content analysis. However, it was extremely difficult to determine whether these programs are equivalent or compatible. In fact, there is a lack of transparency regarding what is actually being taught in these programs, which makes mutual recognition of degrees or credits across countries currently impossible. Next, I would like to explore the concept of discipline-specific competencies in more detail. In the field of medicine, discipline-specific competencies have been clearly defined. The World Federation for Medical Education, WFME, an organisation involved in the quality assurance of medical education, provides a set of international standards. Countries including the United States, Japan and many others have developed their own model core curricula in accordance with these standards. As a result, students are able to acquire a standardised set of competencies required to become physicians. In other words, no matter which medical school they attend within a given country, they can receive education that meets a guaranteed level of quality. A common framework also exists in the field of public health. Even within the medical profession, physicians are expected to fulfill a variety of roles, such as professional, leader, and communicator. In the Canadian context, I found a well-established framework that defines these roles along with the associated competencies. I wonder whether there are any publications that clearly describe discipline-specific competencies in the field of music. The answer is yes. I identified at least 5 key documents that can serve as guides for examining discipline-specific competencies in the field of music. Due to time constraints, I will not be able to go through each one in detail today, but I believe all of them are essential reading for anyone involved in program design. Nevertheless, I would like to briefly show you just a small part. In the reference points of the tuning project, we can find that the required skills are systematically defined according to each degree level. In the AEC Learning Outcomes 2017, learning outcomes are defined for each of the 3 degree levels. What you are seeing now are the learning outcomes for the bachelor's level. They are organised under 3 overarching domains, with a total of 51 individual learning outcomes described. Conclusion. Based on what I have discussed so far, I believe it is clear that in order to expand the scale of education while maintaining its quality, it is essential to establish a shared framework. As such a framework, it would be beneficial for us to develop a core curriculum for health education programs for musicians that can be commonly used across institutions. To achieve this, it is essential to compare and examine the learning content of health education programs for musicians that are being implemented in different countries and institutions. I would now like to introduce the process for how a model core curriculum can be developed. First, we will collect existing health education curricula implemented by different countries and institutions. In particular, we will examine how learning contents, learning outcomes, and learning goals are designed. It is also important to investigate the qualifications of the instructors. This allows us to consider what kinds of qualifications and competencies are necessary for educators who are expected to promote health education for musicians. After collecting this information, we will visualize it in a way that allows for effective comparison across programs. Next, we will develop a set of competencies. There are 2 key perspectives to consider when defining competencies. One is based on the level of the educational institution, and the other is based on the professional roles that individuals are expected to fulfill. Finally, we will define the learning objectives and learning contents according to each educational level and professional role. These tasks require a significant amount of time and effort, but we believe they are essential and unavoidable steps in further advancing health education for musicians. When we consider competencies based on the level of the educational institution, there is a useful tool available. It is the Musician's Health Literacy Questionnaire, developed by Guptill et al. In 2022. This questionnaire is a scale designed to assess the level of health literacy required by musicians. In other words, it can serve as an assessment tool for measuring learning outcomes. Moreover, since literacy constitutes a component of competency, it would be appropriate to link the contents of this scale to the competencies we aim to define. I would now like to touch on the steps involved in designing an educational program. For those in the audience who are already involved in teaching, especially when writing syllabi, this may seem like basic knowledge. However, in the literature review I conducted, I found several cases where this basic knowledge was not being properly applied. So I would like to take this opportunity to confirm a shared understanding of these fundamentals. Based on my review of quality assurance frameworks in higher education and the field of music, I found that educational programs at the university level are expected to be designed according to the following process. First, we determine which level of the 3-cycle system the program corresponds to, whether it is at the bachelor's level, the master's level, or otherwise. Next, we consider the program goals. What do we want students to be able to do as a result of their learning? At the same time, we define the learning outcomes, which describe what students will be able to achieve through their studies. There are usually multiple learning outcomes, and together they support the overarching program goal. Each learning outcome should be linked to specific learning contents, which are divided by class sessions. Each session should have at least one learning outcome, describing what students will be able to do after completing that part of the course. Once the learning outcomes are clearly defined, we can then decide how to measure them, that is, the method of assessment and the grading criteria. This forms the learning assessment component. Finally, we calculate how many credit points students should earn through the program based on the total number of learning hours required. One important point to keep in mind is that learning assessment and program assessment are not the same. In the literature review I conducted, I found that some studies appeared to lack a clear understanding of the distinction between these 2 concepts. Learning assessment refers to the measurement of how well students have achieved the intended learning outcomes. It is what determines the students' grades. In contrast, program assessment is used to evaluate the overall validity and effectiveness of the educational program that the instructors have designed. While the results of learning assessments can be used as one indicator for program assessment, they are only part of a broader evaluation process. Other indicators of program assessment may include the results of student surveys about the educational program, whether the program goals, learning outcomes, and assessment methods are coherently aligned, whether the learning outcomes are measurable, and whether the program is designed to ensure equivalence and compatibility with similar programs. That concludes my presentation. I sincerely hope that a globally shared framework for health education for musicians will be established in the future. Thank you very much for your kind attention.